because I realized that everything in life, especially work, things happen. You can overcome them. Nothing is that big a deal. I could have died out there. The issue you've got these days is LinkedIn has caused this effect called the LinkedIn effect, where
Welcome to another episode of the CEO DNA podcast, where we explore the minds and journeys of remarkable leaders shaping industries. Today, we're diving into the story of David Mackenzie, a powerhouse in the recruitment world with over 30 years of experience around UK, Europe, and the Middle East. David isn't just a recruitment expert, he's an entrepreneur who took bold risks. Founding McKinsey Jones, launching initiatives like Women at Work Middle East, and leading innovations in talent acquisition. Beyond business, he's actually a really well-known athlete who already run many ultra marathons and also Ironmans and normal marathons. And we will unpack his career, his vision for the future of recruitment, and how he's pushing boundaries, both professional and personal. So let's welcome David.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
Very good. Yeah, remarkably sparky this morning.
Good.
Up at 5 in the gym. That's probably why.
And we talk about that because you were running already many ultra marathons and some marathons. But let's start with the CEO. What is for you a good DNA of a CEO?
I think it's the ability to inspire people who work for you, because my philosophy has always been I'm an on-the-tools recruiter. So I still bill as a recruiter. I still win business. And to run a recruitment company, you need to be able to inspire people to do what you do.
Right. And you actually started in the corporate world?
Yeah.
Yes. Michael Page was one.
That's it.
A big, was it directly after uni or?
No, so basically a bit of very short story. I was going to the army as an officer and I decided to take a year out. I went to Michael Page on their grad scheme as a non-grad, bizarrely enough. I don't have a degree. And I did almost 8 years there. I was the youngest director at Michael Page in UK at the time. And then I went to monster.com and became a .com entrepreneur.
Right.
Which was really interesting. I loved that part.
Maybe explain us a little bit what Monster is doing.
So Monster was the biggest job site in the world. I emphasize was. It is no longer. I think they forgot that LinkedIn was creeping up and building a community. So I ran their UK and Europe business. And in effect, it's selling job adverts or access to CVs. Very similar to what LinkedIn is today. But it was a $6 billion business. Huge. In the States, it's still very big, by the way, as well.
So what was one of the learnings, and we talk about all the different steps, at the beginning when you started at Michael Page, where you also had the chance to interview a lot of CEOs and saw also which kind of CEOs had a good impact later on and which CEO emailed you back and say, I need another job, please help me out. So what were the characteristics, what could you see when you interview some of the CEOs?
It was, even at a very young age, you can see who's good and who's not good. And it was very transparent, actually. I think the bit that I saw when I interviewed people was how they treated me as a young recruiter, how respectful they were, how much they explained, what were some very basic questions I asked. And because they could flex dealing with somebody quite junior like me at 24 years old, compared to a team of maybe 2,000 or 3,000, you saw that humility, that listening, that ability to get me on side. And I learned that very early on.
Interesting. So there was always kind of an approach towards you to kind of like get to know the person, or how did they get you on their side?
When you meet somebody socially, and when we first met, you asked, you picked up one thing about my ultra, and then we started having a conversation. I think when you meet a very senior person, I meet very senior people now, especially Saudis and Arabs, and it's interesting, they're always pre-prepared. They always ask you questions about yourself. They almost get you off guard a bit before you actually start interviewing them. They're very clever in that way. And I think when you meet a good CEO, it's somebody that really takes time to understand who's interviewing them, why they're interviewing them, and what they can add to them as an individual. It's very clever.
Very interesting. So you worked at Michael Page. How many employees did they have at this time worldwide?
Wow, that's a good point. I'm not sure, but in my business in London, there must have been about 900 to 1,000 people, quite big.
Yeah. So just the office in London, when you imagine, so
Yeah.
just doing recruitment.
Yep.
So you kind of, which areas did you recruit?
Sales and marketing.
Sales and marketing.
Yeah.
And what were your learnings here when you recruited people, when you saw, also for people who are listening, who say, okay, I want to now change my job and maybe approach one of the companies or even Michael Page, who were most successful, not only the CEOs, but also the other candidates?
I think it's the issue you've got these days is LinkedIn has caused this effect called the LinkedIn effect, where you see an advert, easy apply, everybody applies. The people that get the interviews are the ones that are suitable, i.e. they've read the advert, we're looking for a marketing director with 20 years in telecoms. If you've got that, apply. If you're an HR person with 5 years in catering, don't apply.
So if somebody looks for a job, you would say more quality before quantity.
Absolutely.
And really get into the details. What is needed? Am I a fit? And if yes, point also out that I'm a good fit because I have ABC.
Yeah, and if you meet people that are very good at what they do, whether they be junior or CEOs, they understand what makes themselves good. They understand their key power, I call it. You know, I'm a recruiter and dyed in the wool. I'll never be an HR person. I'm a recruiter because I know how to find and assess good talent. That's my power.
I love it. You call it key power. I always call it superpower.
Yeah, exactly.
And when I meet somebody, and I just met the other day some people for the first time, I always ask them, "What is your superpower?" Especially when they achieve certain levels in life, where they maybe be a CEO or whether they are founder of a big company. So I think that's very interesting. What is your superpower?
That's a good question. I listen very well, and I'm one of these people that I really like meeting people.
Right.
And I spend a lot of time listening to what they're saying and I prompt them. So what it gives me is a very good picture of what they're like as an individual. So I can assess a person usually within about 5 or 6 minutes. Are they a good fit for the job? Are they a good person? And I emphasize that bit because that's becoming a bigger and bigger issue these days. And do they have the power to inspire people? Having met with you, I know a bit about you already. But you've obviously asked, you've looked at my profile, you know I've done ultramarathons, which is a big part of my life. Right. So I'm already naturally engendered to help you.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
With recruitment, it's a really easy job to do well, but sometimes, and majority of the time, recruiters get it very wrong because they talk too much.
Interesting. So listen more, another learning. I think that's very important. Also as a CEO, by the way, I always tell my team I'm the last one to speak because I don't want to prime anyone about my opinion. And I think it's also very important, God bless Steve Jobs, I kind of learned it from him by talking to people who worked with him. Yeah. He could change his mind in a heartbeat, I just had last week the pleasure to talk to somebody who worked together with Steve Jobs, very intense.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I was of course just asking him a question the whole evening. And he said, the most interesting point was that he could change his mind in a heartbeat. And I think that's strong character.
It is, but I think you need consistency. And I think as a CEO or an MD of a business, if you keep changing your mind all the time, now Steve Jobs was an epiphany. He was a very different character. But if you look at the rank and file CEOs, the ones that survive in the Middle East and do a good job are the ones that consistently perform. They're not meteoric. They don't have a really good year, then a really bad year, really good year. And you see people leaving jobs every 2 or 3 years. My view is if they keep going up after 2 years, there's something wrong.
Very good point. Yeah. So that means they really should be able to,
it's a bit like that, the meteor. Don't be a meteor. You shine very brightly for a short period of time, then you die out. Just be consistent, because I think consistency means people who aren't as good as you can engage with you because they understand where you're going. Yeah. And also the high performers know that this is where the benchmark is. I'm going to exceed.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I fully agree on the part where you said the CEO should give consistency when it comes to, I always say we have a big ship or a cruise liner, so you need to keep the direction. Yeah. On the one hand. On the other hand, it's also important to not be so stiff.
Absolutely.
In your opinion, to say I'm the only one right in the whole organization.
It's the listening.
Because I think the listening part is very important. Yeah. And also to understand that everyone has a value to bring to the table.
Yeah.
And I think that's super important. And it's the end to talk a lot to customers as well. How was it for you? Because in Michael Page, you built up quite a career when you said you started very young.
Yeah.
How did this happen? What were your capabilities here on the way? And
I worked really hard. And it's a bit like me as a triathlete.
Right.
I'm a really average triathlete, but I work really hard at being average, which means I consistently perform every time. And for me, and it's funny, isn't it? I was talking to one of my junior consultants the other day, and it's almost become embarrassing to work hard. There's almost this attitude about when we hire recruiters into McKenzie Jones, if somebody says to me, what are your work hours? I have a slight concern about that because they're already narrowing down their time they're working for us.
yes,
I want to see people that can be flexible, that can, really perform very well. So when I was at Page, it was a really good business at training and developing you. And
Yes.
if you worked very hard, you got the rewards and they paid you extremely well. Page were I loved working at Michael Page. I think they're very different now as a business, but then they really, really pushed people who are entrepreneurs. They loved it.
But then you worked there in a more or less corporate job.
Yeah.
And then you said, screw that, let's now be a founder. So how did this shift happen? Especially because you tell me, Michael, it was actually nice to work there.
Yeah.
But then you said, no, I still want to, have a bloody nose maybe and jump in cold water and see how it works.
I don't even think it was that. I went to work for Monster and I love Monster because they taught me to think differently and not to be so rigid. Michael Page, you work 12 hours a day, 8 till 8 every single day.
Oh, wow.
That was the ethos.
So half day, so it was okay.
Yeah, exactly. And then I went to Monster and I was traveling all the time and I just had my kids.
So the position at Monster was...
I was I had some bizarre job titles. I was head of sales, marketing and customer service. And then I became the regional MD for UK and Europe. And so I managed all this, in effect, it's a sales team, basically. And I became a salesperson rather than a recruiter. And the epiphany came for me. I was traveling to New York just after 9/11 and the plane was empty. And I was thinking, why am I going to New York after 9/11 just to turn up to a meeting? And I realized I worked out how much time I was spending in internal meetings to how much time I was spending with customers. 70% internal, 30% customers. I suddenly realized, I looked at my salary and they paid me very, very well. All my companies have been very good to me. I realized I wasn't adding any value and I wasn't learning anything.
Mm-hmm.
I was learning to do PowerPoint and to be very good in meetings. I wasn't in front of clients understanding the market. So I basically one day came home and said to my wife, I'm going to go back to recruitment. She goes, which firm are you going to join? I went, I'm going to do it myself.
Mm-hmm.
Biggest decision. Worst decision ever.
Yeah. Okay. I understood. So then you said, okay, that at Monster you had more like a management role.
Was it? Yeah.
And Monster.com, whoever knows it, especially also maybe in Germany, really used to be like a huge monster for recruitment and so on. And to really find the matchmaking between open positions and candidates. And they had an exponential growth.
Yeah, massive.
Why do you think was that the case?
I think
I show the time frame because later on we also had a different time frame.
Yes.
But the time frame when you've been was really.
I joined when it just took off, and what they wanted to do is they wanted to almost take away the power of recruitment companies.
Mm-hmm.
So they want their whole business strand was to go to clients direct,
revolutionize
exactly,
and cut the middleman or
give them a database. So they had a database when I was in the UK. We had a database of 60 million candidates who were active and updated their own CV, etc. We went to clients and said, you can have that for $10,000 a year. Clients were going, this is a no-brainer. And it worked really very well. We did, a lot of work with public sector, a lot of work with government. It was a massive success.
And so, but again, why was exponential growth? Why did it happen? So you believe because it was a bit of because it worked for a long time and then it stopped.
Well, it worked for a long time. And then what they failed to realize is that people don't update their CVs on Monster. They completely forgot about it. So that when clients were going in thereafter, they're out of date. And then suddenly this new site came in called LinkedIn, which was community driven. And we were trying to build our communities, and they were getting in the States, they did very well. In Europe, they didn't do too well. And suddenly LinkedIn came in, and Monster didn't realize how successful LinkedIn's community was going to be about referring people, about updating your own CV. And I think Monster failed to see that. And there are a number of other things happening in the market, but it killed what was a very successful company.
Interesting. You then, as regional MD, need to travel around.
Constant
sales
traveling.
Have to basically have to sell enterprises your services. And for the candidate, I think it was more or less free to upload for.
Yeah, the candidate was. We didn't really worry about the candidate. We had a candidate customer care team that I looked after, and they were very good about answering queries, about showing how CVs should be built, how to make sure that your CV was optimized so Google would find it, etc. But mine was only enterprise. So I was basically meeting with all the big Fortune 500 companies and also the big recruitment companies, because we sold access to them as well. So we had 2 bites of the pie, and it worked very well.
How good can you match a CV based on the requirements without basically talking to them?
Then it was our algorithm worked really well. So if you put into Monster looking for a candidate with government services experience, based in the Middle East with 15 years experience, it will pull up really good searches.
Yes.
That was Monster's massive power. The search engine worked really well. It was purpose-built by Monster. It was owned by them, and then they sold that ability out to other companies as well. But it was brilliant. It worked so well. There was nothing wrong with the functionality of Monster. It was they missed out building the community where you and me would update our own CV because you could see it on LinkedIn.
Yes.
You couldn't do that so well on Monster. There was no incentive to do it.
Interesting. Good point. Community, yes.
Yes.
Then after you applied for a job, you then had the interview.
Yes.
How much can you actually learn from a person interview? How authentic, can you ensure that an interview, if you think this person fits, that this person is still there in 11 or 14 months?
No, you can't. No, you can't, in reality. The skill of a recruiter these days is about being able to assess a person based on the criteria your client gives you. My skill as a 30-year-old person in recruitment is to sit in front of you and to get to know you. Essentially, it's a conversation. What I'll be doing throughout that conversation is finding very key things about you. Are you married? How many kids have you got? What does your wife do? What are your drivers? I'll then go into your job. What have you been successful at? What have you failed at? How have you overcome failure? It's all these key things. You can tell pretty much within 30 minutes whether a candidate will fit a job or not. Usually it's in about 10, if I'm honest with you.
Wow, interesting.
But the problem with recruiters these days, they've lost the art of interviewing people face to face.
Right.
It's all done on Teams or to a degree on WhatsApp. And some agencies don't meet candidates. We have a very high success rate of placing people. The reason is because we meet our candidates. We get to know them. If we can't meet them face to face, we'll do a Teams call them, but we'll spend time getting to know them.
So what are good interview questions? Or are there any good interview questions?
Loads. I mean, there's loads. I mean, my classic one is, I always say to them, how have you affected the bottom line of your company? What have you done that meant your company has made more money? It's a very broad question. It's very interesting how people come up with answers.
Interesting.
Often they'll come up with corporate speak, and I go, no, just tell me exactly,
how you will it?
Yeah, did you motivate your salespeople to sell more airtime on television by going out with them and showing how it was done? And you can really get to understand how a person does it.
Interesting. How many people did you already interviewed?
Oh my goodness me. I've never been asked that question.
Well, welcome to the CEO DNA podcast.
I reckon 50,000 probably.
Wow.
In my career.
50,000 interviews.
At least.
So what has been the most craziest interview you have been in?
Yeah, interesting. So I interviewed the son of a paramilitary dictator. I won't say which country. And he came in, very smart guy, and he was very, very good. I do HR now. I recruit in HR. He's a very good HR person. I looked at his name. I'm like, Gaddafi. Are you? And he went, David, honestly, yes, I am. He was my father. And I was like, wow. suddenly the interview took a turn. I said, look, I don't mean to be rude. Could I ask a few questions? He said, go away. Go ahead. What was he like? And I asked a few questions. He told me some confidential stuff, which I won't talk about, but he was a really smart guy. And I said, that's interesting. You've lent into this question. You haven't avoided it. And he goes, why would I avoid it? It's part of my life. It's part of my history. So my teachings for senior people is, you will have made mistakes in your career. Own them. And tell people how you've overcome them, because you're still a CEO now. So you must have done something right to overcome that.
True. Yeah, good point. And I mean, sometimes it's also with the family name because something happened in the past. So it's exactly, maybe he didn't even do anything.
No, he didn't. He didn't do anything.
So yeah, no, good point. Yeah, so that was then time at Michael Page, then time at Monster. Very interesting learning. Thank you for that. And then at Monster, you said, so now I'm traveling so much. How many days per year?
I was traveling 5 days a week to the States and around Europe.
So you had all those points everywhere, right? So I got...
Hate flying. Yeah. Literally, I think I spent... The point came, it's a very personal point. I had a house in Richmond in London which overlooked the flight path. It was in the distance. And I had a very rare Friday off. My young son, Kit, who's now the Royal Marine, I picked him out of bed and I was giving him a cuddle and he was looking out the window and he went, oh, I'm looking at the planes flying across. And he went, Daddy. And I'm like, I turned to my wife and said, does he do this every day? And she goes, every day. He gets up and he points at a plane and goes, Daddy. And I'm like, oh my goodness me. He just, I'm not present with him. I'm not with him. He's 2 years old. He thinks I'm on a plane constantly. So it was a bit of that, I didn't agree with some of the Americans. I was meant to go to the States and work out the States, and I had a real problem with how the Americans were as individuals in
company
Monster.
Politics.
Oh, they were terrible. I mean, it was a bit... I'm a very transparent guy. I mean, my company policy is, my core values are transparency, honesty, and, long-term relationships. My American bosses were not like that at all. It was stab, and you've got a cubicle, and I didn't enjoy that. I found it very difficult. So I got to a point where my CEO in UK said to me, you can pull a tiger's tail so many times, David, before he bites. His point being that I could push back on the Americans a lot of time, but eventually they're going to get rid of me. So I took the view that I couldn't deal with this anymore. So I decided to set my own business up back in recruitment, which I love.
So how did this start? Now, especially for everyone listening, you have a good corporate job. Yes, you have politics. You have them everywhere. Yeah,
I had loads of money as well. They paid me so much
and they paid you so well. You had all miles in the world.
Yep.
Yeah. No time to actually use them, but at least all miles in the world. And then you said, no, I'm done now. I started my own business.
Yeah, that was an interesting time in my life. I went from earning so much money to literally earning nothing. I think for 3 or 4 years, I earned nothing, zero money. So I burnt through our savings and everything. I think I wanted to see if I was any good. It sounds an odd thing to say. I do this in triathlons. I push myself hard in running because I want to see if I'm any good anymore. Can I do a sub 4 pace? Can I do a sub 5, 70.3? And I think when I got into recruitment, I was really good at what I did. I really was passionate. I was very good and I pushed very hard. And I found as my career became bigger and I became more successful and more senior, I was less client focusing. I was more internaling. And I got to the point where I'm going, am I any good anymore at what I do? So it was a very, very interesting thing. I went back to basics. I picked up the phone and I cold called. I picked up clients. I placed people in jobs. And I went back to what I was doing 15 years before.
Interesting. So basically, you're running now a very successful recruitment agency. How many employees do you have?
39, I think.
So you don't even know anymore.
No.
That's a good sign. That's a good sign.
We have on-site people. I interview everyone. I get to know everyone. But
to come there and be successful and also generate the income you want to have, or it took a long time. I think that's a good learning. It was 3-4 years. You burned through your savings.
Longer.
Your wife believed in you. You have 2 kids, 2 boys. They also, you took this risk as well on your shoulders. Says, I will do it anyhow. What kept you going and not going back to a corporate
Failing.
job?
I've never failed. I've done things wrong, but I've never given up. I've never given up on anything. And I think that's one of my you asked about my superpowers earlier.
Persistence.
I'm so persistent. I'm a persistent athlete. I'm a tenacious athlete. My friendships with my friends, I keep going with them even when they're sometimes failing. And I think everything in life for me is a challenge. And I don't know if I'm successful now, if I'm really honest with you. I think Mackenzie Jones has got an amazing reputation. That's down to the people that work there as well as what we've created. Right. It's an interesting question. Would I have made more money staying in my corporate life than I have now? The answer is yes. I would have earned significantly more, probably 10 times more than I'm earning
you
now.
were in management of a .com
exactly.
bubble at one point. It's equity.
I think I could have retired maybe 10 years ago if I'd done that. Do I regret it? No. I've loved my entrepreneurship. It's been very difficult. I think I've got some very good people in my business. My partner Paul, my partner Jazz Sanger, who works with me now, he's a really good guy and he's very different to me, and he's helped me in the last 11 years grow the business. And he's believed when we were at rock bottom after COVID, when we lost all of our money and we had to rebuild it again. I've rebuilt the business 4 times.
Interesting.
And I'll probably rebuild it again, and maybe, I don't know, in 10 years' time. I'm not sure.
I think that's a very important point to know also for an entrepreneur, to also always reinvent themselves again. Because COVID showed again that things tend to be a bit more digital. Then with Monster, you had now LinkedIn, that it's more community-based, that you also have a willingness to update your profile and not as Monster one time uploaded and never look at it again, and then have
corporate arrogance.
Corporate. Yes.
I think everyone says, "Oh, you've done it. You've been successful." My view is success is a very short thing. You can be successful for a year, and then next year you could have a disastrous year. I've talked to a couple of my competitors this year. We've had an exceptional year. We've had a really good year, best year in 15 years. Really good.
Mabruk, nice.
Yeah, I'm very pleased. And it's not me, it's down to the guys that are running, all their individual units and a different bit. It's been great, and we've got clients that are stuck with us. But I think next year, it might stop tomorrow. It might go wrong again. I think the ability as an MD or as a CEO is the ability to keep bouncing back and to anticipate when things are going to go badly. And that's the secret, I think, of being a good manager, director, CEO is to understand that nothing is forever. You've got to keep reinventing yourselves to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, very interesting. I think one capability of yourself, and I see this also often at founders, entrepreneurs, and especially also CEOs, they like to challenge themselves also in the sport environment. So I asked you earlier, I said, okay, how many marathons did you already run?
Yeah, loads.
Yeah.
I think I've done 3 marathons on the back of Ironman. So I've done 3 Ironman, and I've done 6 full Ironman, and I've done 6 ultras, including Marathon des Sables.
So 6 ultramarathon. I just need to explain it for everyone. So you have marathon, then you have Ironman, and then for somebody who really likes pain, I would say, I think it goes already out of challenging yourself, yes, for sure, but then you have ultramarathon where you said, okay, it's just like...
We'll give you an example. My last one was Marathon des Sables, which if anyone's never seen it, it's basically 263K in the Sahara Desert. So every single day you run a marathon.
263 kilometers.
In the sand.
And
you have to carry everything yourself. Completely self-supported.
And you have to carry everything yourself. I purposely repeat that. Why a human would do that?
It's a very good question. Would I do it again? The answer is no. Not because it almost killed me, but because I've done it and I want to do something different. But I tell you what that did teach me, and it's the ability to mentally be strong. Let me give you an example. You come in from running a marathon, 4 hours in the desert, you're sweating, you're hot. There's no showers, by the way, or anything like that. So you come in with your pack, you're a day lighter because you've eaten a day's worth of food. You sit in your tent. So MDS give you a tent, 5 liters of water, and a square toilet seat thing, which is in the
MBS?
desert. Marathon des Sables, NDS. MDS. So you come in and you lie on your blow-up mattress, you unpack your rucksack, blow it up. You are in 50-degree heat, you're dehydrated, your feet are sore, you're tired, and then a sandstorm hits you and you're covered in sand. So I'm a bit of a clean freak. So I made sure after every run, you get these, I don't know if you've seen them in the restaurants, you have these little towels, you put water and they blow up.
Mhm.
I had 30 of those, and I'd spend, after every run, I'd spend my whole time just cleaning myself, my whole body, everything, just to make sure I got the sweat and sand off me. I did that, and one of my friends, Yola, looked at me and she started laughing. She goes, you know what's going to happen now? And sure enough, a sandstorm hit. My face was covered in sand. And then you have to go to bed, wake up, and run another marathon.
So you could go in your free time to the Maldives?
Yeah. I've never been to the Maldives. You know that? I've never been.
But you choose this. So let us understand a bit more again. So the Marathon of the Sand. How did you come up with this idea? I'm doing it in the desert.
I didn't. One of my friends who I'd taken through the Ironman experience at 70.3 said to me, I'm going to choose something for us to do together.
Is that a friend who says, let's go to the desert?
Her name's Yola. She's a nightmare.
Greetings.
So
Hi, Yola.
Yola is, she said to me, oh, I've got an idea. Why don't we do MDS, Marathon des Sables? And I'm like, what's that? And she goes, oh, it's a bimble in the desert. And I'm like, okay. So I said, yeah, I'm up for it. Didn't know what it was. And about a week later, I get the thing through from MDS. And I'm like, this is 260K. It's the longest race. It's the hardest foot race in the world. I said, this is the same one we're doing. She went, yeah, I've signed you up for it. I'm like, oh my goodness me. I'm not sure if I can do this. I genuinely thought, wow, that's probably, and then I found out it was self-supported, and literally it had, and I think I Googled it and it had a 49% failure rate. And I'm wow. Like, wow. But anyway, I thought, why not? It's a challenge. I'll go for it. And I trained very hard and I did it. I really enjoyed the experience. There are days when I absolutely hated the race.
How many days are you running?
It was 7 in total. So 6, and then was an easier. There was a 21K at the end.
So 6 days,
constant
and
running.
7, and you constant running at night in the desert. You
one
sleep.
Is a double. One's 80K.
Oh wow.
83K.
And one day is 83 kilometers.
All the way through the night. Yeah.
All the way through the
Finished
night.
at
You're
2:00.
running. Finished 2:00. You have your mattress. So you're just happy to somehow sleep a bit.
Yeah.
And then you reach the goal.
I've got a video of it. I actually videoed myself running into the end.
What happens?
So emotional. I mean, really was. It was just, I'd realized I'd done something that very few people in the world actually do. And I was running towards the end, and the supporters were all out cheering us. And there was a guy, an English guy, that was one of the volunteers that I'd seen him at every water station and at the end of everything. And as I ran, he went, David, come here. And he gave me my medal.
Wow.
And he gave me a big hug and said, you are a legend.
Wow. Amazing.
And then I walked off, and I looked at myself, and you wear the same clothes for 7 days. I looked at myself and I stank. It's filthy. And I just had this massive smile on my face. And I remember sitting down at the end with a load of other people, and we just all just not talking, just staring. It had finished. After 6 days of torture, we'd finished, and we'd come in fairly intact. I was cut and I was bruised and I was broken. And it was just that realization that you can actually do anything. I'm not a particularly good athlete, but I'm a real believer that when I put my mind to it, I will do anything. I've never not finished a race. I've never DNF'd. I don't think that's a bad thing if you do DNF, because it means you've got a bit of self-control. Problem with me, I will keep going until I die.
Do you think everybody could do that?
Yeah. I think anyone can
Why?
do MDS. I think because it's a mental game.
It's just a mental game. Just means...
No. I'm being slightly disingenuous there. I think you need to be very fit. But I think like you and most people that certainly that I know are
Don't sign me up, okay? Man, I love you, but don't sign me up.
I think anyone that's fit enough to run a marathon or a half marathon could do MDS. You've just got to train yourself. It's very hard to do because you're running in sand, which I'm now injured after 3 months of doing that because it ruined my hip flexors, my abductors, brutalized them. So I'm now going through rehab, and I've stopped running for a bit. But I think anyone can do it. Yeah, I believe this about anyone in life generally. If you put your mind to something, you can do it. You might have to go through massive obstacles, but anyone can do anything.
You came back home then after 7 days, and you run during the day. You just by yourself. You're thinking a lot.
Oh yeah.
you come home as a different person,
Yeah,
as a different husband.
I think my wife said to me, "Did you enjoy it?" And my first answer was no. I didn't really miss her because I couldn't. By the way, one thing I didn't speak to anyone during that 7 days because there's no reception. You can't check WhatsApp. You can't phone people. There's no communication.
Wow.
So for me, business-wise, it was a really good switch off.
Detox.
And I switched off for my wife. But what you did every day, there's a thing called emotional tents. And you go into these tents and you can record a 1-minute video of how you feel. I did that for 3 days. And then on the 4th day, I'd been sick, had heat exhaustion, almost passed out. And I had to be put on in a bed full of water and stuff. So what they do, you can go into the tent. The left-hand side is for blisters and other things, and the right-hand side's for major injuries. And I had heat exhaustion. I knew it, lived in the Middle East, told the guy I've got heat exhaustion. He goes, right, you can have a drip, or we can just put you on there and just pour water on you. And I went, I'll have a drip. And he goes, that's an hour penalty. So I went, I'll have the water.
Wow.
I did that in a state of almost hypoxia. I was in a really bad way. I literally finished the race. I'd taken my rucksack, I just dumped it on the ground and walked to the medic tent. My rucksack was in the middle of nowhere. Luckily, one of my friends picked it up. And I made that choice because I didn't want to,
yeah. Oh, wow. But again, you came home. What did your wife say when, how did you change?
She said, you look thin.
Okay, yeah. But that's like physical, but I think especially mentally, it must like those 7 days, I can just imagine, they do more to you than 7 days on the Maldives.
Yeah. I think I wanted to be alone a lot, oddly enough. I spent a lot of time running and cycling by myself for about 2 months afterwards because I kind of wanted to be just by myself again. But I think I've done loads of these sort of races, these difficult races where you have to dig deep. I think that was the hardest. And I've done quite a few Ironman. I've done, 3 full Ironman. I did Roth in Germany, which is the biggest Ironman, biggest triathlon race in the world. I think I got back into work and I was reinvigorated. I felt really passionate about getting back to work because I realized that everything in life, especially work, things happen. You can overcome them. Nothing is that big a deal. I could have died out there. I literally on the 4th day I was sick. I had heat exhaustion, and you have this GPS thing on your shoulder. There's 2 buttons. One is to call the medics, and they come in these sandrails and check if you're all right. The other one's you have to lift the tab back and you press a button. Once you've done that, your race is over. And when I was on the ground being sick, somebody went to press that tab, and I batted them away. And she said, no, you're in a bad way. I said, I'm fine, leave me alone. They left me for a bit. This French guy kept pouring water on me, and I was sick on his leg twice. I still to this day don't know who he is. And
greetings, yeah.
And I bet, sorry about that. And I literally got myself up, rebooted myself and finished the race, did another 10K and then finished, then went to the medic tent, realizing I was in a bad way.
Wow.
Really bad way.
So what is this crazy motivation to continue? This determination of saying, I will finish it. Whether I finish or I die.
I think I asked my wife what was her biggest concern. She says, you won't give up. I'm worried you're going to kill yourself.
Why you have that in you?
I'm not sure. I think if it got to push came to shove and I did have a real problem, I would call for help. But I'm a real believer, when you start something, you have to finish it. You have to finish it. My biggest issue is I did this in Ironman once, and I remember I was in a really bad way in Dubai, 70.3, and I was running towards the end, and I had this sub 5 hour in my head. I have to do it. And I remember going past the last checkpoint. I cannot remember running past my wife and my best friend and finishing. And there's an awful video of me finishing, just literally doing this.
Right.
I collapsed on the ground, and I was in the medic tent, and 2 hours later, I woke up and I was severely heat stressed. Yeah. Which could have caused a heart attack.
Wow. So you mentioned your wife a couple of times. You have 2 kids. What's your experience for all the listeners out there to have a healthy relationship during all the different periods you had, whether it's in a corporate world at Michael Page or at Monster, or being your own entrepreneur and CEO and founder. What is a good mix? What's your healthy or your
talk to them about what's going on.
Okay.
And my wife is non-corporate. She's a very lovely person, but she doesn't work in the corporate world. She doesn't understand the corporate world. But she's a bright lady, and I just talk to her. I tell her what's going on in my life. I tell her, she understands why I do these races and why I push myself, because I think it alleviates some of the stress from work. The reason I get up in the morning at 5 o'clock to train, that's a stress reliever for me. It's also a driver for me. So I was up this morning at 5, did an hour and a half in the gym. I feel energized today, and I feel great until about 9:30 when I'll collapse and fall asleep. But I think just I talked to my son. My son's a Royal Marine. I don't know if you know about the Royal Marines. 70% failure rate. It's one of the hardest military regiments to get into in the UK. He fell off an 18-foot rope and broke his arm, but carried on. He's got the same mentality as me.
Is this good or not?
I'm not sure. But he's a really good soldier. I mean, he's a very good soldier. Yeah, wow. But he's determined, and he wanted to do that. And I see my traits in him, and my youngest son's the same. They've both got. My wife said to the other day, "I can't believe they're like you. It's just going to be a disaster."
Wow, really impressive. There's something I haven't told ever on camera. I have similar traits, and that is the reason I cannot do bicycle anymore. Because when somebody passed me, I whether die or I get him, and it was. So bad that my wife said, "Michael, you need to stop." So I sold my bicycle.
It got that bad,
and we have here locally in Dubai some very nice tracks.
Yeah, I'm in there every day.
100 kilometers long if you really want, or not the leg, but also around. And at one point, I realized it's not healthy anymore, because I couldn't walk afterward anymore. I was stunned.
Really?
Yes, I catch this guy and got him, but I thought, no, whether I make it or not. But it's I think it's just very interesting at one point to more understand that we should have ourselves as a benchmark, and we should always be better than we have been yesterday. To always I think that's something important.
But also give yourself a break occasionally.
Yes.
Like you with your biking.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not the quickest, but I'm consistently good.
Yeah.
And people pass me an Al Qudra. I hate it, but I hate that as well. Yeah. But I'm usually by myself on my tri-bike,
right?
And I hate it when people draft off the back of me,
right?
And don't ask.
I agree.
So annoying. But the other day I was out on Al Qudra and I was doing 85 and I had 3 punctures.
85 kilometers.
Yeah, 85. Just a quick 85
one. 85 is not for many people. It's not quick. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I was going quite quickly as well, but I had 3 punctures, and I was amazed how many people stopped to help me. And in the end, one of the Maktoum daughters helped me. She's a very good cyclist, and she stopped and helped me. And where in the world would you have that?
True.
And it was just, I had so many people stop and offer me a tire. And then she stopped her driver and repaired my bike for me.
And this community of the cyclists here is really, really impressive. Yeah. So couple more questions. One is, CEO, is he better a generalist, or should he better be a deep expert specialist about something?
I don't consider myself to be a CEO. I'm a reluctant entrepreneur, I think they describe me. I'm an MD, so I'm a managing director. I direct a team of a bigger amount of people. My view is I'm a specialist. I'm a deep specialist. I understand recruitment, and I'm an HR specialist. That's what I do. I have a tech person, I have a finance person, a legal person. I understand intimately HR. I know the community, I know the people, I know what makes a good person. For me, being a generalist in the Middle East doesn't quite work. Mm-hmm. People buy expertise, and that's why they buy us.
Yeah. So the difference between, let's say, Europe and the Middle East, where you worked, and also America, would be Middle East is more focused. They need more specialists.
Yeah, I think we're an education society.
Right.
The reason why so many expats here are to help the locals understand about those new markets. That's going to disappear over time, and will cease to be a relevance. So I think the more specialist you become, the more relevant you'll be.
Interesting. Also, very interesting how you build up such a big following on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And also some of your comments, posts gets a lot of views.
Yeah.
What was one of the big ones?
150,000, I think we had.
And I think also likes and comments and interactions. So as a person,
they've dropped off though. I don't know why.
As a personal brand or as a CEO, what's your learning here? What can we do to be a real LinkedIn mogul or to be there?
Have an opinion.
Okay.
So
how strong?
No, that's the key thing. To be controversial is okay, but to be controversial is not okay. So, example, I wrote an article recently. It's called "Interested" because when we place an advert, we get loads of people writing "interested" because they haven't read the advert. So I wrote, the reason why you shouldn't put that are these reasons, and this is how to get noticed. So it was a controversial point because it's a very controversial point in LinkedIn because everyone puts "interested," and it means they're just not reading it and they're not engaging. And I think I try and put articles that are of value to people. I wrote a really good one actually, which appealed to you. It was, does being a good triathlete make me a good CEO? And the answer is yes, because it means I try and excel at something else bar my job. And I think being good at being a triathlete means I'm good at my job because I understand that you're under constant pressure. You have to keep performing.
Absolutely, yeah. Interesting.
It's key.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Quick question at the end. What do we see from you in the future? What is now a new world record and also business-wise?
Yeah, Saudi. So we've recently set up in Saudi. We have two businesses. We have Mackenzie Jones Recruitment. We have Mackenzie Jones Solutions, like an RPO business. We're very big in Saudi at the moment. So I would see myself, I'm going to be in Saudi 2 weeks of every month, I think, from now on. I like Saudi. I like the Saudi people. I have good friends there. So I think that's going to be my future. But I think Mackenzie Jones is a Middle Eastern brand. We are a UA startup and we're growing in the GCC.
Right.
We will never go outside of that.
David, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Before you go, a quick note to all the entrepreneurial listeners out there. If you're looking for a reliable and efficient way to scale your online business and payments, I highly recommend checking out Copecard.com. It's designed to streamline your processes from payment processing to customer management, all in one platform. Whether you're just starting out or you're looking to scale up, Copecard provides the tools you need to succeed. Visit Copecard.com today and see how it can transform your business operations. Dive in and start optimizing your sales processes now.